Fintech Chatter TV. Presented by Tier 1 People. Leaders in Fintech Executive Search.
Sure. So Agile's a Lloyd's cover holder, an MGA, and an Insurtech. We work in niche insurance. And when I say niche, I mean really, really niche. So no home and motor. The only really retail product we do is travel. But we do things like pilot personal accident insurance, wedding insurance. We do scaffolders insurance, vacant land insurance. Construction, accident and health, financial lines, IT contractors insurance, all the tiny little things that make the world kind of kick over and run really nicely, but that most people ignore. Well, there's a lot of reasons there, but thankfully, given COVID, what occurred with COVID, I had a travel insurance business that didn't fare well during COVID at all. The Agile fared really well because we had a diverse portfolio. And so some lines of business struggled through COVID and others just excelled. And so thankfully with that diverse portfolio, we were able to, ride the wave of COVID a lot better. But also at their heart, an insurance policy has really similar fundamentals. You have an insured person or business entity. You have, a time period that someone's insured for. You have, events that they're specifically insured for. Policies need to renew. You need to be able to communicate with, brokers and customers. And once you get those fundamentals in place, the individual rating factors for each product are the things that vary. But under the hood, the products are really quite similar. Yeah, so once you've got the pipeline of, finding capacity and then being able to build a product and deploy it to market, the hardest problem is distribution, right? So I often do a talk to Insurtechs at Insurtech Australia around, this is the pain that you have to go through to launch a product. And it can be 18 to 24 months from the start of the idea to finding capacity and having the regulatory footprint and getting the product and the testing and then launching. And it can be a whole lot of pain. And then you launch and it's tumbleweeds.
Yeah.
Right? There's literally no one's interested in the product. So we've developed a bunch of strategies to try to validate the product as early as possible to make sure that there's actually a market there for it. As we've grown, it's also easier to launch. So the cost to launch is much, much lower, right? So we can experiment a little bit. And part of the idea is to have many horses in the race and see which one, which ones are going to be the winners and which ones we have to put down. And you have to be brutal about putting the products down that don't work as well.
Yeah.
So the most difficult thing with the types of products that we're working with is it's not always direct to consumer. So we have the broker in the middle. And so, the brokers are our clients as well. And a bunch of the software and the products that we develop are actually to make their lives better and to make their lives as frictionless as possible. So we've got kind of two layers of customers because we do sometimes go direct through brokers, and we help brokers create direct brands as well. And so we need to think about the end customer, but also the broker in the middle, and sometimes, affinity partners. So we sometimes distribute through, online stores, or, we do drone insurance, for example. And so drone providers, will often recommend our drone product as well, right? So we need to think about those kind of steps, but brokers are a key market for us to satisfy and help make their lives better, essentially. I guess I'm a serial business starter. I've had several businesses. I started working for a big agency that then morphed into worldnomads.com and Travel Insurance Direct, and that's where I learnt about insurance. Right. Really innovative, right? So early in Insurtech before the word was invented, right? He was a genuinely innovative company, right? And they were innovative when it comes to regulatory footprint as well. They were one of the first kind of Insurtechs to be able to sell a product worldwide. They had amazing scale. They were doing really, really, really big numbers. But we were the second direct travel insurance product. So Columbus Direct were there, and then Travel Insurance Direct and World Nomads were the second direct products in Australia. We also built the first pet insurance site when I was there, petcover.com.au, which has been sold several times to other people. And and from there, I kind of left and started a digital services agency where I started consulting to banks and insurance companies and NGOs and government organizations. And I often say this, I stupidly started hiring a lot of developers, thinking that there must be a better way. And I didn't have a great plan for that agency. It wasn't a good structure, but we never ran out of money. We never ran out of jobs. We had really big jobs with people like Westpac and Combank and Australian Medical Council, really big jobs. But the problem with an agency is you're selling your hours.
Yeah.
And I was going to die by the time I was 32. Yeah, there's a lot in there. I think with Insure by Us, we were at the time we were 38 people. We were in 12 time zones. January 2020, February 2020 were our two biggest months. The pandemic really hit about the 20th of January. That's where we started, getting notifications from insurers and our capacity providers. But February was still one of our biggest months that we'd ever had in the entire life cycle of the business. The business was 5 years old at that time, right? And we were doing big numbers. We were the travel insurance platform behind about 20 brands in the market. You're talking Woolworths, RACV, RACQ. We had our own brands as well. We were doing, about 95 mil of policies a year, nearly 420,000 policies through the platform a year. 10 mil a month, right? 11 mil a month going through the platform, of which we got a tiny, tiny little percentage for being the platform and a little bit more when it was our brands. But we went from literally doing 10 mil a month, 11 mil a month through the platform to doing minus 200, minus 500.
Yeah.
And we had to refund, literally hundreds of thousands of dollars in policies to people. And I had to fund that as well, right? And we were bootstrapped. The writing was on the wall in about March. The writing was on the wall, and I knew that I was going to have to make redundancies, and I wanted to do it as early as possible to make sure that people got a good payout, right? Yeah. Insure by Us was an A team, right? It really was full of amazing, amazing, amazing people who could have been elsewhere, but decided to stay with us because of the culture, right? And so I was a little bit worried about their employment opportunities, having to let them go. But I was fairly sure that they'd get hired pretty quickly, and they did, right? They all did. But in the middle of the pandemic, literally just over here, our family was almost in one room. I had a little office, which is now one of my kids' rooms. I was shutting the door, letting kind of 10 people go at once, coming out, tears, getting hugs from the family. It was a particularly difficult time. Like we were a kind of $7-8 million revenue business. And we went from that to nothing within the space of, 4 or 5 months. The business is still alive. It's still possible, but it's really like I've got one employee and, I'm just keeping the lights on at the moment and hoping that we can come back. So it was a particularly tough time, right? But the hardest thing, honestly, was, we'd worked so hard on that culture. The team was just humming. Yeah. It was such a great team. There was so many good personalities. We'd gone through some pain to get it to where we were. And, the culture's always shifting. But the hardest thing was kind of grieving at that loss of all of that team and that people. Well, there are lots of lessons, right? I still think you can take lessons from it. But it wasn't an easy time. It was a tough time. Like it was a really, really difficult time. I was lucky that Agile was running at the time, and I had the support of the Agile team as well. And Agile was, taking off. It was literally one day where I was doing a Zoom, letting someone go at IBU, and then opening another Zoom half an hour later and hiring someone at Agile because Agile was growing. So it was it was almost a night and day, situation for me. This is going to sound really cheesy, but I've always been a fan of the Stoics, even before they got popular with entrepreneurs and Ryan Holiday and stuff. The biggest solace was it wasn't because I had a gambling problem or that I'd made some huge, error in investment or, I'd, done something inappropriate with an employee. It was totally out of my control, and lots of other businesses didn't see the pandemic coming. right? And that's one of the things that the Stoics talk about: focus on what you can control and what you can't control. And I ended up the creek, and the only thing you can do when you end up at the creek, even if you did cause it, is then find the right way to deal with it in the best possible way. So everybody got their payouts, everybody got good payouts, really good redundancies, right? We made sure that everyone was taken care of. We helped them try to find new jobs. We kept, everything was done in a really transparent way. Everyone was aware of what was happening. I was just going to say, there's still so many lessons, right?
Yeah.
Only being travel insurance was a massive mistake. We should have diversified. We were trying to diversify into a couple of other lines of insurance along the way. But, one lesson from that is we were stuck servicing white label customers. And so I will never white label ever again, right? Your product roadmap ends up being driven by your white label customers who don't have the same objectives as you, right? They say that they want to grow the top line of revenue, which is what you want, right? When you're getting a cut of every policy sold. But the features that they request and the features they demand don't reflect that, right? And so I will never, ever white label again, right? What we do at Agile is a little bit of white label, but what we do is you can put a logo here, but nothing else changes, right? This is the way it works. You can ask for something, and if it's a good idea, I'll listen, and we'll put it in the roadmap maybe. But if it's not a good idea and I don't want to do it, I'm not going to do it.
Yeah.
Whereas at IBU, we were driven by the large insurance companies that we were providing the platform to. And that was a huge mistake that I was trying to correct, but we were just so far down the road and there were such big customers that we just couldn't get out of it. It's just not fast enough. We need to go faster. I thought we'd be a lot further down the road than we are. Insurtech Australia was an amazing group of people who were only motivated by altruism, right? They literally wanted to create a better ecosystem, and it was such a great group of people, and they worked so hard. All of us, worked really, really hard to get that ecosystem up and running, and I think that we haven't had success lobbying, organizations like ASIC or the Insurance Council to make things easier for insurtechs and fintechs to get started. I think that, the big insurance companies, have a monopoly or an oligopoly, and they like to, they're saying, just stay over there. We're happy to kind of pinch stuff from you or, but they're not really interested in innovating, right? They're trying to keep their position kind of safe. And I would too if I was them, right? But I thought that we'd be a lot further down the road than we are. There's been very few key changes to legislation. Insurtech sandbox, fintech sandboxes, they just have not worked at all, right? The hardest thing with an insurtech, especially, and similar for fintechs, is the regulatory footprint, the regulatory barriers to getting up and running are huge, right? If you wanted to become an APRA licensed insurer, you're talking about huge amounts of capital. You're talking about nearly 12 months worth of paperwork just to get approved, let alone even if you've got the best, huge bank account from the best kind of capital providers in the world, you still have to go through 12 months of paperwork, to get up and running. And I understand why we've had HIH, there's a reason why we're regulated, right? People need to be able to trust in insurance companies and insurers, but there has to be an easier way to experiment with innovative products without having to go through that pain. But I actually think that we need a fund. We need the hardest thing for an insurer to back an insurtech is that, and we've been in this position ourselves at Agile where we've backed a couple of insurtechs. The minute they sell 5 policies, if you're selling a liability component, that's 5 times $10 million worth of exposure for maybe $400 worth of policies, right? So I've now got, 50 mil of possible exposure that I might have to pay out for $400. Right. This is something that insurtechs don't necessarily understand, right? They just go, we're going to sell lots of products. And we're like, well, you're selling exposure as well. Right. So that risk to reward for an insurer to back that insurtech is just not a great it's not a great algorithm for them
Yeah.
to try to back it. So we need to take away that risk, and developing a big fund, where you can incubate and fund and grow insurtechs is, I think, the only way to do it. The biggest problem with insurance, I think, is that it's complicated. And when you're selling a product to a customer, to the end customer, most of them don't understand what they're buying.
Yeah.
And you see that come out in the retail products like pet insurance, like travel insurance, that have the highest number of claims at AFCA, right? Those products need to be simplified. And I think that parametric is a way to do that. And parametric insurance is basically, think of it like the easiest example is, cyclone insurance, right? So when a cyclone hits far north Queensland, the biggest gap that customers have is getting the claims adjusted to their house, right? In record time. But yeah, that gap between when the event happens and when a claims adjuster can get to the house and then provide funds, that's the gap that a parametric product can do. So it basically says, if a cyclone event happens within your postcode, of winds above this or rain above this or flooding above this level, we're going to pay you this much cash. And it's basically like, if this, then that will happen. To a customer, I go, well, I know if I get over 100K winds in my postcode, even if my house is not affected, I'm still going to get a payout, right? Because I may not be able to get down my street because the street's flooded, or so the idea that I can easily understand what the metrics are for when the payout happens. That move to parametric, where if this defined event happens, you get this defined amount paid. I think that is a really, really big movement. And the other really important thing to think about insurance, it's not a nice analogy to hear, but I always think no one wakes up in the morning and goes, I can't wait to buy insurance. I liken insurance to like, a toilet brush. No one wakes up in the morning and says, I can't wait to buy a toilet brush today. But when you don't have one, you're in the shit, right? So you really need to show people why they're going to buy the product and why they need the product. For Agile, we have really big things coming. Some of them I can't really talk about. The biggest thing is that we're going international. The hardest thing for Agile is that we have proven the model works. We've proven that the platform works. We've proven our interactions with brokers work. We've found really great niche markets. What we need now is literally more product. And by product, I mean literally the insurance product off the shelf to sell. So we've got distribution sorted, we've got platform sorted. We need more product. And that means, better relationships with London, with Lloyd's, better relationships with local insurers to deliver more product to our brokers and to our customers. So that's what we're working on at the moment, is, finding a way for us to have better product and secure product. So we've lost the way that Lloyd's works is you get what's called a binder, and which is basically the rights to sell a product in a certain jurisdiction. And we've lost some binders. So we lost our financial lines binder because the market's really tough. And Australia suffers from this problem where, if an insurance company in London, a syndicate, has losses in the US or Europe, they'll just pull out of a market altogether, right? They'll pull out of financial lines altogether, even though the Australian book of business is doing really good, solid business and making them a profit. It's not big enough for them to worry about, right? So the numbers they're doing in the US, if they lose $1 billion, they're just like, we'll pull out. They'll come back in 3 or 4 years later when the market improves. And so that's happened to us. So we need that security of product. And so that's what we're working on at the moment, is making sure that product is secure and can't be taken away from us. My contact details are everywhere. You can find them on the website. You can get me on LinkedIn. Just get in touch. Also open to talking to founders, especially bootstrap founders, if they want to talk about bootstrapping and their challenges. Really open to talking to them about that as well.